The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 9th, 2020 Westminster City Council and General Improvement District Board meetings. At this time, I'd ask all of you, if you have a place you can, please turn to the nearest American flag or watch the one on your screen, and please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, folks. First item on our agenda tonight, we will be convening the meeting of the General Improvement District Meeting Board of Directors. At this time, Ms. Fitch, would you please take the roll for the board?
Yes. Chairperson Atchison.
Yes.
Board Member DeMott.
Here.
Vice Chair Seitz.
Here.
Board Member Seymour.
Here.
Board Member Scully.
Here.
Board Member Smith.
Present.
And Board Member Bowles.
Here.
Members of the board, you have before you the minutes of the previous meeting of October 14th, 2019. Do we have a motion for the meeting? Vice Chair Seitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the board approve the minutes of the October 14th, 2019 meeting of the Downtown General Improvement District as presented.
Board Member Scully.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion from any member of the board? Mr. Seymour?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was not appointed a council at that time of the last GID, I will be abstaining tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Board Member Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also was not elected at this time and will be abstaining on this vote.
Thank you very much. Board Member DeMott, did you have a comment?
No, I was looking for the second, but I got beat to it.
Okay. All right, on that, with knowing that we will have two members abstaining, all in favor of the motion of accepting the minutes as presented, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries with 5 in support and 2 abstentions due to not being on the board at that time. Moving on to the first business item for us tonight, item 3A1. Purpose of this item is to hold a public hearing on the City of Westminster Downtown General Improvement District budget for 2021. Ms. Fitch, do you have anyone who has asked to have a comment from the public?
Mr. Mayor, we did not receive any emails and we did not get any requests to speak live before the deadline, nor did we have any voicemails to play back at this time.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any comments from staff, Mr. Tripp?
Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you. I would just refer our City Council and yourselves to the budget packet about this item. This is a public hearing this evening. I would inform the public that may be listening that on the City Council's website for this evening's meeting, there's a complete budget. This is the General Improvement District for downtown Westminster. It's relatively new. There has been a substantial amount of investment in the downtown, nearing $500 million at this point. Most of that will yield in the future significant tax revenues that will help pay for the operations and maintenance of the downtown. This is an interim budget that does not reflect that future growth, but does reflect revenues and expenses as projected in 2021. So with that, Karen Krieger and other members of the staff are available to answer questions you might have. Thank you.
All right. Members of the board of directors, do I have anyone who has a comment or question on regards to the budget as proposed? Board Member Smith?
Thank you. I'm just curious as to how we came up with 35 mils, if that's something we set or county sets. I was unclear on that.
It's a great question, Councilor Smith. I'm going to call in either our city attorney, Dave Frankel, or Karen Krieger. Either can answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. This is Dave Frankel, the city attorney. So in development of the downtown Westminster project, this general improvement district was created as a way to fund infrastructure improvements to the downtown. So this revenue that would be generated by way of the GID is a tax that is assessed on real property within the boundaries of the district. And when the district was first created, Tabor authorization for up to 50 mills was granted by an election in 2015. And the staff research has indicated that a mill levy of 35 would place this in a competitive position relative to other areas in the region. And it is believed that 35 mills would fund the needed infrastructure and facilitate, I believe, repayment of the certificates of participation, which were initially issued to fund things like the parking garage, the street grid layout, curb gutter, and the utilities that are in ground in downtown Westminster. So with a 35 mill levy as recommended, we believe that the properties within the district would not be at any competitive disadvantage relative to other areas in our region. So that the research that was done on that was a comparative study, I believe, that compared mill levies in other areas that we view as comparables to downtown Westminster. And I believe the current mill levy for the site is in the neighborhood of 70 to 75 mills. So by adding 35, I believe the total mill levy assessed on these properties would be in the neighborhood of 105 to 110 mills. So that would be the staff recommendation for the 35 mil to be set by council and the board of the GID.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that explanation. It's super helpful.
Any other questions from any member of the board? Board Member Scully? Hang on just a minute. I have to close the public hearing before you go to the motion, so we're still there, but I'll come back to you. Board Member Sykes, did you have a question or comment on the public
No,
hearing?
I was just in queue for seconding.
All right, no problem. All
Sorry.
right, there being no other comments, and we have no comments from the public at this point, I will close the public hearing. And I will turn to Board Member Scully for the motion for item 3A2.
Thank you. I move to adopt resolution number 4 that sets the mill levy for the tax year 2020 for collection in 2021 at 35 mills for the City of Westminster Downtown General Improvement District, formally adopts the 2021 budget for the district as presented and appropriates the funds as budgeted.
Vice Chair Sykes?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any comments or questions from any member of the board? All right, seeing no comments or questions. Ms. Fish, this is a roll call vote, if you would, please.
Chairperson Atchison.
Yes.
Atchison votes yes. Board Member Demott.
Yes.
Demott Board Member Demott votes yes. Vice Chairperson Seitz.
Yes.
Seitz votes yes. Board Member Seymour.
Yes.
Board Member Seymour votes yes. Board Member Scully.
Yes.
Scully votes yes. Board Member Smith.
Yes.
Smith votes yes. Board Member Voles.
Yes.
Board Member Voles votes yes.
All right, thank you. Members of the authority, that concludes all the business before us at this time. We will now adjourn as the GID Board of Directors, and we will reconvene at this point as the Westminster City Council. For the record, we have already considered the Pledge of Allegiance as completed. The roll call has also been done as a part of the board. All members are present. Next item on the agenda will be the consideration of the minutes of the preceding meeting. And Councilor Demott.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to the City Council approve the minutes of the October 26, 2020 and November 2nd, 2020 meetings as presented.
Councilor Seymour.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for acceptance of the minutes as prescribed in the motion. All those in favor, please signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Moving on to item 4, there are no presentations this evening. Moving to item 5, public comment. Ms. Fitch, do you have any comments tonight from the public?
Mayor, we did not receive any emails, but we did receive we did not receive any emails by the deadline today, and we received no request to speak live, but we did receive 4 voicemails, which we will play now.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Wayne East, and I am the current co-chair of the Parks and Recreation, Libraries and Open Space Advisory Board. I also served as the chair of the Stanley Lake Boating Task Force. I can't speak to the IGA since I haven't been a part of any of those conversations. I can, however, speak to the Stanley Lake Boating Task Force. This advisory task force consisted of 5 members representing different users of Stanley Lake, ranging from boaters, users of the open space, to water customers. And our charge was to develop recommendations that would virtually eliminate aquatic species, more specifically zebra and quagga mussels, from being introduced into Stanley Lake via motorized boats. I wholeheartedly believe it was a good process with a charter that consisted of ground rules, purpose, and goals. And my personal ultimate goal when I volunteered for the task force was to find a way to a compromise, some way to allow motorized boating while ensuring the safety and integrity of the drinking water for the municipalities of Westminster, Thornton, and North Glen. A lot of staff and volunteers spent a lot of time looking into options. Ultimately, the task force felt we had developed a list of recommendations that would result in a win-win compromise, only to find out the technology we were recommending wasn't as reliable as it needed to be. It is unfortunate that we weren't able to reach a win-win scenario, and I don't envy the city staff who had to make the decision of disallowing motorized boating. For what it is worth, I believe it was probably the right call given the current situation. I do hope that through advances in boating and lock technology, as well as scientific research aimed at controlling and eliminating zebra and quagga mussels, that motorized boating recreation on Stanley Lake can be reevaluated in the future. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Marilyn Flockman, and I reside at 9820 Wolf Court in Westminster. I have been a Westminster resident for the past 59 years. Given the 2021 city budget adoption is scheduled for later on your agenda tonight, I wish to make a request to release funds which are already budgeted. To repeat, to release funds which are already budgeted but currently are frozen. The funds in question pertain to some initial work done whereby the city would become more involved in archival operations for not only the city, but would include a variety of community organizations. This would be a true community collaborative effort. These organizations have previously expressed an interest in joining with the city in a community archival center. At this time, I'm requesting the release of the remaining budgeted funds of $83,600 for archival efforts. In particular, funds would be used to compensate a facilitator to work with staff on the recommended archival stakeholders group, which the library consultant had previously recommended, and Director of Parks, Recreation, and Libraries, Jason Gannett, had supported. The intent of the stakeholders group would be to bring various interested parties, including the Westminster Historical Society, the 3 school districts, the 2 Westminster Rotary Clubs, Community Reach, churches, and several others to collaborate on developing a set of guidelines and general procedures informing the desired community archival center group. The facilitator would assist the group in reaching its intended objectives. We are losing Westminster history each and every day that goes by. This year alone, we have lost 2 prominent Westminster citizens who played long-term important roles in the shaping of our community. Vi June and Wilbur Flockman both have a plethora of significant historical documents, photographs, and other materials which should be professionally handled and preserved for future interested citizens and others to view and use in research. There is already an indication that the groups I mentioned want to be at the table to work together in this most important endeavor for the Westminster community. The concept of an archival center has been in the making for more than 5 years, working with city staff and some of you on city council. Now is the time to move forward. Thank you for your consideration.
This is Chris Stimpson, living in the Cotton Creek area of Westminster on Vrain Street. Mr. Mayor, councillor sitters, councillors and staff, I recorded my opinion on the subject of Westminster water rates at a previous meeting in late September. My point then was that those residents whose water bills were some 8 to 10 times higher than mine must have been using water very wastefully, and I maintain my point now. Colorado has an arid climate, and in the location of Westminster is more naturally a prairie region than a well-watered coastal biome. To try to modify its appearance and surface to resemble a different part of the continent is an unnatural, extravagant, and prodigal activity. It should also be noted that massive climate disruption is making us drier year by year. The chief effect of climate change in my area is, and will continue to be, water stress. We live in a drying climate in an arid zone and should not, either as individuals or communities, be trying to turn it into a subtropical coastal region. In the situation thus described, it is incumbent upon those of us living in Colorado to manage our water use responsibly. Perhaps it is unreasonable to cultivate and manicure a large sward of surface covering on our property that makes heavy demands on our water assets. And if our water and sewer systems need significant and costly upgrading to assure us of adequate water supplies for our daily needs, perhaps it is reasonable to pay for such infrastructure. All of this is true in an empirical sense and should not be outside the realm of reason. Yet some of our residents have taken it upon themselves to collect signatures for a recall effort aimed at members of City Council who have supported setting water rates that are appropriate to the existing situation. It is abhorrent to me that Westminster residents who may be irresponsible in their use of our precious water resources are seeking to penalize those who are being responsible in managing those resources. If an elected official is not performing their functions properly, the democratic remedy is to remove that official at a scheduled election. The mechanic of recall should be reserved for gross malfeasance and contravention of oath of office. To use it to express dissatisfaction at officials who are performing their duties conscientiously and responsibly is, I believe, inappropriate and willfully selfish. Christopher Stimson, 11133 Rain Street.
My name is Charles Major from 5940 West 94th Place. And my public comment today is regarding Councilor David DeMott and his continued divisive and exclusionary behavior on social media. Councilor DeMott has been repeatedly warned about displaying divisive symbols in his house or in public meetings, and he continues to do so. I have made other council members aware of Councilor DeMott displaying hats on his official Facebook social media page of the 3 Percenters, which is a domestic terrorist group. And Councilor DeMott seems to think that the city charter doesn't apply to him. And now Councilor DeMott in the past week has been promoting content from his official Twitter page, casting aspersions on the legitimacy of the presidential election. Councilor DeMott is not a private citizen, but a public official, and he continues to embarrass this city, continues to embarrass the residents of this city by promoting such divisive and ridiculous content. Is this what we really want from a public official? Why has Councilor DeMott not been censored by fellow members of the committee? Is it because people are too scared to confront Mr. DeMott? Is it because of the water recall? President Pro Tem Sites, you have been made aware of these divisive symbols and displays of Councilor DeMott aligning himself with very spurious right-wing groups, and apparently you don't want to confront him either. It's funny to hear Tripp and Frankel and Atchison continually talk about content neutral. You want to make this city content neutral. And Councilor DeMott is free to express whatever opinions he has in his private life as a private citizen. But when he does it from the dais, when he does it from his official social media accounts, he is bringing shame and disrepute on this entire city, on this council, and possibly legal problems in the future. Councilor DeMott has no place on the City Council of Westminster, and there is no excuse for fellow councilors, for City Manager Tripp, for City Attorney Frankel not taking action against the City Councilor who is repeatedly violating the city charter and obviously has no respect for the citizens of Westminster and views his ability as a counselor to spread misinformation and outright lies from his channel. And that's just, it's despicable and disgusting. And frankly, I am sick of it. And a lot of other residents are sick of it too. Councilor DeMott needs to be removed from office. Thank you.
And that was our last public comment.
All right, thank you, Ms. Fitch. Next item on the agenda is report of city officials. Mr. Tripp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity. I don't have any report this evening.
All right. Moving on to council comments, Mr. DeMott.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to each member of the public who decided they wanted to call in and voice their freedom of speech. I think that is a pivotal, foundational thing of this country, is that you're allowed to do that. So whether or not you agree with me and my stances, I always welcome that kind of feedback. And I appreciate the fact that people call in and speak their mind. That's really what makes democracy work. We just went through an election cycle, which is always a time-honored tradition. I appreciate everybody who took part in that election process. We'll have another election this next year for the city council itself. So again, I appreciate everybody who's taken the time to be part of our process.
Councilor Bowles.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to thank everyone who voted. It was the highest vote process we've had in our country's history. So thank you everyone for taking part. There's no higher office than citizen in our nation. So thank you all for being part of that and being involved. I want to just report on the Environmental Advisory Board. Met a couple weeks ago, and they're beginning to talk about and look at updates to our oil and gas regulations. The reason for doing that is because it hasn't, for one, been updated since about the 1990s, 97, I believe. And then also in the 19th session of the General Assembly, they passed Senate Bill 181, which allows local oil and gas regulations. So it's basically a cleanup. They've looked at it, they're making input, and then we will have it momentarily. So I just wanted to let all my colleagues know that will be coming to us relatively quickly. Thank you.
Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too wanted to say thank you to all of the people who voted in this election. It is our greatest privilege and our greatest right to be able to elect our people to represent us in this country. So thank you for working so hard. I wanted to mention that all boards and commission meetings are open to the public. And this week, the Parks and Rec Advisory Board is meeting at 6 p.m. It is a virtual meeting. You can access the link online at the webpage. There are so many ways to be involved as a citizen in our city and to be in the know. So voting is one way, but also taking part in just as a public person, sitting on or attending boards and commissions and listening to what the plans are for the future of our city and giving your input. Very important things to do. So please mark your calendars and plan to attend. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Sykes.
I don't want to appear redundant, but I do think that this election is something we all have to recognize. We had more people vote in this presidential election for both candidates than ever before in our nation's history. So regardless of who won, this was a win for democracy. This was a win for people feeling efficacy in this country, having a feeling of what they wanted to see happen and voting for it. One of the hallmarks of our country is that we have a peaceful transition of power. I really hope all of us will embrace this election and honor that tradition. I really hope that this is an opportunity for us to come together as a nation and heal. I do believe that we've had far too much division, far too much anger, and almost a tribalistic manner in which we've handled the parties. And I do hope that we see people coming together, looking for things that we share in common, what values we share in common versus issues that divide us. So I'm coming to you with a heart full of hope of what we're capable of if we come together. This week, I did have just today a meeting with the Colorado Municipal League. I am on the committee that's helping rewrite their policy statement. Obviously, that will go to the full policy committee to be approved. But it was a great conversation, and a lot of the big issues that are facing the state that are impact us very differently. We had a lot of Western Slope communities on this call, in addition to some of us in the Front Range, and really making sure all voices are heard, all impacts are understood. It's such an essential part of what we do. And that only can be done by really listening to hear and to understand, not to, and getting out of our kind of positional mindset. So it was a really great call. I'm hoping to have a lot more conversations like that in the future. For everyone who called in tonight, thank you for sharing your strong opinions, your beliefs, and letting us know as counselors. A lot of us on this council don't agree on everything, but I do respect people's rights in their own private capacity to share their own beliefs. So I guess that's all I'm going to say about that.
Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick update. Special Permits and Licensing Board met this last week to approve a new license, and the docket is also going to have some items on it for later this month. The great thing about that is there are still businesses even under this current environment, that are looking ahead to better times, and they're preparing their licenses to open. And so that is being on that board, that is a great glimmer of what is to come for our city. So I think that's a positive thing for all of us. So I look forward to some of these businesses as they open. Might be a little slower than they had hoped and as we had hoped to, but they're preparing and they're getting ready. So thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Seymour. Other comments from council? Otherwise, I'll move to the next item. All right, moving on to the next item. First item up on for business tonight is the consent agenda. This is a set of routine matters that act on with a single motion. Since we only have one item on tonight, we'll deal with that as part of the motion. Councilor Bowles, if you would, please, item 8A.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the city council adopt the consent agenda items 8A. Thank you.
Councilor Demott.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any comments on the item that is contained in the consent agenda? Seeing none, Ms. Fitch, if this is a roll call vote, please.
Mayor Atchison,
Yes.
Councilor Demott.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mayor Atchison votes yes, Councilor Demott votes yes. Mayor Pro Tem Sights.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights votes yes, Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour votes yes, Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Councilor Scully votes yes, Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Councilor Smith votes yes, and Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
Councilor Bowles votes yes.
All right, thank you, Council. Motion carries on a 7-0 vote. Item 9, we have no appointments or resignations tonight. Moving on to the first item of business for the night, we have item 10A. This is adoption of resolution number 41. Pleasure of council. Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 41, authorizing staff to proceed with the acquisition of easement interests necessary for the construction of the Sheridan Boulevard Multimodal Transportation Improvement Project in an amount not to exceed $75,000, including the use of eminent domain if necessary.
Councilor Smith.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on item 10A, resolution number 41. Any comments or questions from council? Seeing none, Ms. Fitch, this is a roll call vote for item resolution number 41.
Councilor Demott.
Yes.
Councilor Demott votes yes. Mayor Pro Tem Sights.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights votes yes. Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour votes yes. Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Councilor Scully votes yes. Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Councilor Smith votes yes. Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
Councilor Bowles votes yes. Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Mayor Atchison votes yes.
Thank you, council members. Resolution number 41 passes on a 7-0 vote. Councilor Scully, you're up again for item 10B, resolution 42.
I'm sorry, sir. I believe that Lindsay beat me to it. I'm sorry, Councilor Smith beat me to it.
Sorry, I got hers in and thought it was the one above. Councilor Smith, would you please take item 10B, please?
Yes, thank you. I move to adopt resolution number 42, which supports the triennial renewal of Rocky Flats Stewardship Council.
Now, Councilor Scully.
I second.
All right, I have a motion and a second for resolution number 42. Any comments or questions? And Ms. Scully, I think you have a comment.
I do, sir. I just wanted to say that I will be supporting the renewal of our Rocky Flats Stewardship Council position this evening. I think this is a very important council to be a part of as our city. We border Rocky Flats. We know that it is a great concern of our residents, and it affects our city in many ways. So I am a proud person to represent our city on that council along with Councilor Seymour. And I think that the council does great work in really thinking about how residents and surrounding communities will be affected by the long-term ongoing effects of Rocky Flats. So I am proud to support this tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilor Bowles?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councilor Scully said it exactly right, and this is important work. And I just want to come on and thank Councilor Scully and Councilor Seymour for their work on this important work. So thank you for your efforts and hours working. And I think you represent our city well. So thank you for your work on this. And I'll be supporting it tonight.
Other comments from council on resolution number 42? Seeing none, Ms. Fitch, if you would, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights,
Yes.
Councilor Seymour,
Yes.
Councilor Scully,
Yes.
Councilor Smith,
Yes.
Councilor Bowles,
Yes.
Mayor Atchison,
Yes.
and Councilor Demott.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion for resolution number 42 passes on a 7-0 vote. Moving on to item C1, resolution number 43. Now I think I got it right. Councilor Scully, you are on the motion, please.
Yes, sir. I move to adopt resolution number 43, setting the 2020 mill levy collectible in 2021, adopting the budget and capital improvement program for fiscal year 2021.
Councilor Bowles?
I second the motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second for item number C1, resolution number 43. Comments, please, and Mayor Pro Tem Sights, you're up.
I just want to recognize the amount of work and energy that went into this with constantly shifting variables. During a pandemic and a financial crisis with considerable retraction economically, not just in the city of Westminster, not just in the state, but nationally, our staff was able to come up with a balanced budget that still reflects the values and goals of this council, and by that, the community. So I did want to acknowledge the effort and work. I did have, I want people to know that this council, all members of this council, spent a lot of time and energy asking questions, trying to really make sure that this budget, which we all recognized, nothing could be sacred, right? Like, we had to be willing to make some hard trade-offs. That's what the times dictated. But that by and large, this still held our vision that we all had just agreed to as kind of the North Star. And through a lot of conversations with staff, we were able to understand how they used that principle and the other principles described in the budget document to try to make those hard calls. And we had some back and forth, but I am proud of where we got to. So I do want you to know that we've pushed for equity, pushing the digital divide. We've pushed for sustainability. There's an increase in our funding, a significant increase in our funding of open space. We are still committed to public safety. This is a budget that really has, I think, is a reflection of the community's values and needs right now. And we're going to be nimble and flexible because we recognize we don't realize all of the variables. But we are still very committed to investing in equity, in the community, in sustainability, and into our beautiful open spaces. So with that, I guess that was more editorializing, but I did just want people to know this isn't the first time we've seen this document. We've worked really hard on it for a long time.
Councilor Demott.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for your words on the budget. I will reiterate what Mayor Pro Tem Sights stated, that there was a lot of work that went into this budget, and I appreciate all the work that's went into it, and I think everybody gave a little And so, however, I will be voting no on the 3 budget items. My reason is I maintain to be consistent that I think that there's a lot of areas that we're headed in the wrong direction. I think the organization has become too top heavy. And to be consistent with that view, I cannot in good conscience vote yes on this budget. However, I do appreciate all the work that went into it and the feedback that was taken from council through various meetings that we did spend hours on this budget. Thank you.
Councilor Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for staff. So we had a request tonight to unfreeze an item, and we had to freeze many, many items in our budget this year because of shortfalls due to the coronavirus. I was wondering if staff could address what freezing means and why it was necessary.
Mr. Tripp, would you like to assign that to someone?
Yeah, I would. Councilor Scully, thank you for the question. I can answer that. I'd rather pass the microphone to our Assistant City Manager, Budget Director, Chris Lindsay, because he spent and his staff spent so much time, and while I have a chance to say this, I want to thank you, Council, for the amount of time you spent in a very difficult year. You know, we went into in March, a period of time where we went into an emergency order. It allowed us to delay the adoption of this budget by a month, 3-year action, which further allowed us to get better information so we didn't have to make as difficult cuts as we might have otherwise needed to make. In this case, we did freeze a number of things, including positions and certain capital activities and operating things that we would normally do in order to have the budget balance in 20 and then also go into 21 with that idea. Chris can speak to this particular item. I would just tell you that those items like this item that have been budgeted and we've elected to not move forward are only because the future is a bit uncertain still. And we'd like to have some bandwidth available in 21 to balance our budget and to allow you to make the highest priority decisions along that time. But Chris, if you might add to that, anything else you'd like to add for the council at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. This is Assistant City Manager Chris Lindsay. I think some clarity here might do everyone a little bit of good. The library archival capital improvement project hasn't been formally frozen through our budget process this year, but many projects have been paused and or delayed during the COVID-19 response. In terms of this particular project, I'd have to check back with our staff and the library division and Parks Rec and Library to see exactly where it is. But this one hasn't been formally frozen through our process.
Okay. Thank you for that report. I appreciate those comments. This was a very challenging and difficult process. This has not been an easy year. I think that as a council, we were all very nervous because we knew that we had significant shortfalls in our revenues this year with the onset of COVID. We are navigating this as carefully and as best as we can. And I want the public to know, I want our residents to know that the staff has done a fabulous job in balancing this budget when we have so many shortfalls. And our future is still very uncertain, as I think will be evident through the COVID report later tonight. We see our numbers still increasing. We know that there are possible stay-at-home orders on our horizon, and that will hurt us again. So I appreciate the work that the staff did to work so hard to balance this budget, keep us in line, keep us in a direction that is positive, doing as much as we can, but understanding that there are things that will have to be tabled for this year, and that we will work very, very hard to see if we can get things back on the table next year. You know, this coronavirus has affected us. If you haven't personally had the coronavirus, you've probably been impacted in other ways, economically, or perhaps your work situation has changed. maybe you have lost a job, unfortunately, or perhaps you now work in a different environment than you are accustomed to. We know our children are greatly impacted by this. And this budget was also felt the impacts of COVID. So I will be supporting this budget. I appreciate the work of our staff, and I look forward to being able to pass this tonight.
Councilor Bowles.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start by thanking staff for their work on this, and my colleagues also. There's a lot of work that went in on this budget, obviously. We had an $18 million gap to fill due to COVID. So we had a loss of revenues, and that took a huge effort. And I want to thank Chief Financial Officer Larry Dorr and Chris Lindsay and his team and everyone for their work on this, because that was a huge effort. And we did it through reserves. We did it through prioritizing our capital projects and picking what we absolutely had to take care of now. And we also did it through a hiring freeze. So it was a lot of work went into this, and I want to thank them for that. I am, along with Mayor Pro Tem Sites, I know we began working on this. She mentioned open space. I know we began working on this a while back to say it's the #1 priority for residents in our city. It comes up over and over. We do a citizen survey every other year. And this is just one of the most popular programs. And it's actually our brand. This is what makes Westminster, Westminster, is our open space, our parks and recreation. And we were able in this budget, even this really dire financial crisis, we were able to find a way to up and increase the open space acquisition funding. And we've had a lot of people ask us to do that. And we made it a priority with our city staff and our leadership and the staff here in the city hall that do what we can to find money, because that's really one thing people all agree on. It unifies people as a place where everyone go, regardless of your background or wherever, you can go and be in a park or an open space. So it applies to all of our residents. So I'm pleased to see that happen in this particular budget. And thanks staff for their hard work. Thanks for my colleagues. We had many sessions on this, and a lot of discussion went into analyzing the capital projects and where we are on the capital projects, which ones made the cut and which ones just didn't because of the financial crisis we're in. So I thank everyone for their work on this, and I will be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Council, I'm going to go ahead and go through the list of all those who've not commented, then I'll come back around if somebody has a follow-up question. Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first want to recognize that we are here with this budget, and we stand on the shoulders of those heroes who came before us. Those councils in past that diligently worked to increase our reserves, the staff that found that money to put us in this position. Some of our fellow cities are going to take substantial hits because they did not plan ahead of time. And so there's always talk of a rainy day fund and putting away money for what you did. And had those that come before us not done that and made that commitment to it quarter after quarter, this task would have been substantially different. I know that there are some tough situations to come in. There's some freezing. We hope to always look to the future, and those are still in there. We're not giving up on any of those. We're going to look to move forward. I ran for on a limited government platform. Unfortunately, it wasn't to see it because of a pandemic and a complete retraction of our income, not complete, but a substantial retraction of our income. And while I am not happy with parts of this budget, I don't get line item here. And so I will, in examining this back and forth many times, being voted in favor of this, but keeping a keen eye on the future and on the expansion of government as we move forward out of this pandemic. Thank you.
Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I would like to take a little bit of each part of what my colleagues have said, because it really lends to where we're at as a city and as a council. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem in the thanks to staff. I understand just how difficult it is to put a budget together. I know staff is used to a biannual budget, and this is looking at just 1 year down the line, which I very much appreciate because I think it kind of reins in and holds together where we're at within the coming months. So with the entirety of the budget, it is incredibly hard because, and this is what I was critical on since we had our strategic planning in July. I don't feel that we've correctly aligned ourselves with our new vision as a council, as a new council. And it's difficult to line item all of these to really look at a bigger future to say, here's where our vision is and here's where we're going. And I have felt consistently shaky on that since July. And so I don't know if that's just because of the situation that we're in with stay-at-home, or excuse me, with virtual meetings and just what we've had to deal with this year. And with an $18 million budget gap, I don't believe that we've been aggressive enough in finding how to find the gap in the shortfall. I think that we can look at right sizing an organization even better than what we're doing right now. This, not to say that a pandemic is an opportunity to do that, but given an $18 million shortfall, it is absolutely an area to be keen on, to really look at where are our core services and how can we do better in taxpayer dollars. I do appreciate that we are looking at pay scales for not only our law enforcement, but across city positions, because it is absolutely imperative that it is competitive and that we find good employees that want to stay, because there is a benefit to that. I think we've found that in our CBA agreement with the firefighters and the CBA that we accomplished earlier this year. So while I do appreciate that we're trying to accommodate pay scales and make it competitive, just overall in the situation that we're in as a city, I cannot be moving forward with this particular budget. I'd like us to dive into it further. I know there's not much more time, but I can't move forward with a yes vote on this. I do have a question though, because I did say that in my comment here. Under the University of Colorado, with the RISE, my question was, wasn't this a lower allocation? It says that 250,000 in funds was previously appropriated. I thought council appropriated 98,000 towards that. So if someone could speak to that and kind of let me understand the discrepancy there.
Chris, Larry, or somebody with the RISE program, please.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. This is Larry Dorr, Chief Financial Officer and Deputy City Manager. We'll take a quick look at this while we address some additional council questions. And forgive me, I'm just searching my documents here and looking for that particular reference. Could you bring that to my attention? Which item you're referring to, either in the staff report or in the proposed budget as revised as is, and we'll respond to that here tonight as we move through some additional questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's page 96 of 266 in our packet. I don't know if that's something that you see on your side. And it's under the capital improvement program items.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Yes, well, Mayor, if it'd be your pleasure, we could address some additional questions, and then we'll bring an answer here for Councilor Smith in just a moment, sir.
All right, Councilor Smith, you have other questions? Councilor Smith, do you have other questions?
Sorry, I'm looking as far as my questions. No, I think that was the one that really kind of stood out.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to Mayor Pro Tem Sites, and then we'll try to wait for the answers.
Thank you. And this is a question that really Councilor Scully helped me remember, and I had even written it down on a note. I did want to ask about the caller who came in and asked and mentioned the freezing of the archive funds, and I feel like that's been answered. Those funds aren't necessarily frozen. We received an email from a gentleman asking for improved bike safety. And I've been looking for the email and I can't quite find it. But this is a request that we have had since the very first year I was on council. And there is actually a resident death on this stretch of biking of road. And I believe actually Councilor Seymour probably knows exactly where I'm talking about because I believe it's pretty close to his home. It is heavily trafficked by bikes. I recognize in the budget tonight, we're not going to be able to weave this in, but I would like us to consider putting this on the list of items. I mean, we have a mandate from our residents that they want mobility, multi-mobility and access. We talk a lot about safety, and safety is not just police. It is also, it's safety in all, it's safe streets. It's all of it combined. So I feel like this hits a lot of different things, and it's something we hear about a lot. I remember being moved when I believe the gentleman who passed away, it was his birthday, and his daughter came and spoke to council. And this is something that I wished we had been further along on since I've been on council. So I really want to highlight it for staff and get this somehow on the list of projects if I have the support of my colleagues, maybe at appropriations or at a later date. But I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up.
Are there other questions or comments from the council? All right,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Larry Dorr, once again, Deputy City Manager. I'd like to invite Cody Blue Herb to come on, Assistant to the City Manager, who'd like to describe our city's initiative with the University of Colorado and our neighborhoods and so forth. Ms. Blue Herb.
Good evening, City Council. Thank you, Deputy City Manager and CFO Larry Dorr. I just wanted to give a little more background to Councilor Smith's question. The $250,000 you see is in the CIP fund. Those are funds that are in there in an account that remain in the account as they're spent. Chris and Seth can get into more detail about that. The contract for CU Denver was $98,000. That $98,000 would come out of that $250,000. That invoice has not yet been paid. It's actually currently in the process. We had a correspondence with them today about that. The remaining funds would stay in that CIP account ready for neighborhood initiatives that would be to be determined through this process, with the neighborhoods coming together and looking for solutions or opportunities in their neighborhoods to build community in and across the city. Those funds have not yet been distributed or been defined. It would be, of course, also to hopefully build recovery and resiliency in the city as we move forward after this pandemic or through this pandemic. I hope that answers your question, but I'm happy to answer any additional ones you may have.
That's good. Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome. Thank you, Councilor.
Last call for questions. Hearing no other questions, this is item C1, resolution number 43. Ms. Fitch, would you do the roll call for this item, please?
Yes. Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour votes yes. Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Councilor Scully votes yes. Councilor Smith.
No.
Councilor Smith votes no. Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
Councilor Bowles votes yes. Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Mayor Atchison votes yes. Councilor DeMott.
No.
Councilor DeMott votes no. Mayor Pro Tem Sites.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights votes yes.
All right. Thank you, council. The resolution number 43 vote passes on a 5-2 vote. Councilor Scully, would you take the second part of that item C2, please?
Yes, sir. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 33 on first reading, making appropriations to pay the expense of continuing the public business for the year 2021 and other purposes required by the charter and by any other law.
Councilor Bowles?
I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second for Councilor's Bill number 33. Are there any comments or questions from council? Seeing none, Ms. Fitch, would you move for the roll call vote on item C2, Councilor's Bill number 33?
Yes. Counselor Scully.
Yes.
Counselor Scully votes yes. Counselor Smith.
No.
Counselor Smith votes no. Counselor Bowles.
Yes.
Counselor Bowles votes yes. Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Mayor Atchison votes yes. Counselor Demott.
No.
Counselor Demott votes no. Mayor Pro Tem Sights.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights votes yes. And Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
Counselor Seymour votes yes.
Thank you, council. Council passes Council's Bill number 33 on a 5-2 vote. Ms. Scully, would you take the last part of that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 44, establishing the 2021 pay plans.
Councilor Bowles?
Second.
A motion and a second for resolution number 44, item C3. Comments or questions from council? Seeing none, Ms. Fitch, would you do resolution number 44, please?
Yes. Counselor Smith.
No.
Counselor Smith votes no. Counselor Bowles.
Yes.
Counselor Bowles votes yes. Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Mayor Atchison votes yes. Counselor Demott.
No.
Counselor Demott votes no. Mayor Pro Tem Sights.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights votes yes. Counselor Seymour.
Yes.
Counselor Seymour votes yes. And Counselor Scully.
Yes.
Counselor Scully votes yes.
Thank you, council. Resolution number 44, item C3 passes again on a 5-2 vote. To the staff and to the council as well, reminding us that we have just completed voting on a 1-year budget. And as some of the council mentioned, normally we do a 2-year budget, but because of the uncertainty of the pandemic and where we're at, with the recommendation coming from staff, we are again only voting on the 2021 budget, and we will continue to monitor this and do an update on this at mid-year. Moving on to item 10D. This is an IGA on the Stanley Lake. Mayor Pro Tem Sights.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to authorize the city manager to execute a second amendment to the Stanley Lake Park intergovernmental agreement between the city of Westminster, the city of Thornton, and the city of North Glen, dated November 28th, 1994, and First Amendment dated November 28th, 2019.
Councilor Scully.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there comments by council? Councilor Smith and then Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you to staff for really taking the time to delve into this IGA to equalize responsibility and ownership and taking care of our water resource. I'm especially thankful that staff took an extra step and listened to council on adding the security audit. I think that's an important piece to this, and I think that collaboration and partnership is a smart solution to one of the many flaws that was in the previous IGA. That said, though, my point of contention still remains with the no boating on Stanley Lake. Although a task force was established and there were lots of participation from the community and staff, I'm extremely disheartened and disappointed in how it was handled. Even at the council level, I don't feel that we've had a conversation to fully vet this and what that would look like. Even with the security audit as written, the audit doesn't even allow for a reconsideration of getting any kind of boating back on Stanley Lake. But I want to reiterate that I've never contested our water quality is of the utmost importance, and that we need to take care of what we have, both with water and our infrastructure. But I think that we are almost there with this IGA, but at this time, I can't support moving this forward.
Councilor Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too, this has been a long road for staff, and I want to thank them very much and for keeping us informed along that. I have to echo what Councilor Smith said as far as the security audit is absolutely critical to the safety and security of our drinking water. And I'm also, I have in the past many times shared my disappointment with the boating task force and how that was handled. And then the fact that how we, the mayors from both Thornton and Northglenn sent letters to our city manager and the council saying that they would not make a deal if trailer boating was considered. And frankly, I was disturbed that those letters were asked for. Having sat in on those boating task force and knowing the science, that the fact that to date, unless something has happened just in the immediate past, there has not been one surviving larvae of quagga or zebra mussels in the recreation water of Wyoming or Colorado. And there are several reasons that scientists who do water work believe that is correct. So the most important part of this, though, is the fact that we balance out our responsibility so that it is truly a partnership with Westminster and Thornton and Northglenn, so that we do not bear the brunt of any type, and not just invasive species, liability for this incredible gem that happens to lie on the edge of our city. My frustration is deep, but I think we need to protect ourselves and our residents first, and we then have to find, and I'm sure there's going to be one soon, a way to allow multiple uses of our lake. So thank you.
Other comments from council? Councilor Demott.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to echo my fellow councilors. Thank you to staff for all your hard work on this. I think there's not a member on council who doesn't think that the water safety and quality of our water is the most important thing, not just to our city, but to our partners in the IGA. I, however, am also not going to be voting yes on this. One of the things I wish that we could have done is maybe done another year extension and done the security audit. I'm a big proponent of the security audit. I think before we got into a long-term agreement, it would have been behoove us and our partners to have a holistic view of exactly what needs to happen at that lake to protect our water. I feel like we've kind of put the cart before the horse in a lot of this conversation from day one when we realized we had security risks. So I've just been disappointed with the process. So I don't think that this is the right agreement in my mind. I do think we do need an agreement. We do need a security audit. We do need to protect that water, not just for us, but for everybody who gets drinking water from Stanley Lake. But I think that we could have had a better solution that would have better fit the needs of all our partners and our residents.
Other comments? The IGA that's before us has been in the process for a year now. And as the comments made by Councilors DeMott, Seymour, and Smith indicated, our partners, being Thornton and Northglenn, had taken a very substantial stance at the beginning of the negotiations that they would not come into an agreement with us if the issue of boats on the lake was still there. They are as concerned about the safety of the water as we are for our citizens. They are not willing to continue on the current risk non-sharing that was because we were the ones who were at risk of having to pick up all liability on this under the previous agreement. And I'm very thankful to the staff and to the staff of those two cities coming to an agreement that is much more plausible financially and at risk sharing for all of us to share in some level of the risk. We are as important as we can, making a first priority at the safety and security of our water systems and our water supply. But when you have multiple partners sitting in the same bathtub, sharing the water out of there, it has to be an agreement that all parties are in support of. So whether we like the fact that boats can or can't be on there, the first priority, as you've all stated, is the protection of our water. And the potential, regardless of how small it is, of infecting something that we have no cure for is an issue that I don't think either one of our partners were willing to go back and discuss. And we've had pros and cons back and forth with whether or not the zebra mussels were here or whether they're not. But the fact that the risk is there because of some people who ignored the rules and exposed us to that is what brought all this to the surface. I think it behooves us to put first and foremost the safety of our water system over recreational uses at all times. And I think that's what you have all stated, is that first and foremost is the protection of our water. And after a year of negotiation, an agreement that is within a few days of being approved by all three cities, we will have an agreement that will let us move forward with the protection of Stanley Lake as a water source for over 300,000 people and growing. And how much importance is going to be put on protecting that water into the future. Other comments? Mr. DeMott, I think you had something else.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just quick question, and just out of courtesy, I'm curious. I know that we had our voting task force, which to the points the mayor just made and the rest of us made, the water safety is the most important thing. But just out of courtesy, I am curious if staff reached out to the people who spent time, talent, and treasure trying to figure out a solution that would accommodate recreational boating, to let them know that this was going to come before council tonight.
Mr. Tripp, do you have any response?
Mr. Gang, please.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp and Councilor DeMont. I appreciate the question. And if I'm understanding correctly, the question was, did we alert the Standing Lake Boating Task Force? I think that was the question as far as the item coming before council tonight. If I understand that correctly, the answer is no, we did not. We wanted to make sure, depending on the decision of council, we certainly plan on informing them as early as tomorrow, depending, of course, the decision and the direction of council this evening. The IGA was something that was referenced, but put sort of in a parking spot, if you will, parking lot on the side during the work of the task force because it wasn't part of their charter. All that being said, I certainly understand the customer service opportunity and linking back to the folks that worked very hard on trying to find a solution. And certainly, pending the outcome, with the outcome this evening, staff will absolutely connect with those folks.
Thank you, Mr. Gank. I would appreciate that happening. I would say, the last thing back to the security audit, one of the reasons that I was such an advocate for that, I think one of the things that concerned me throughout this process is the thoughts around other risks that we frankly have at the lake. And a lot of that stuff I think came to light because of the boating task force, and I think they deserve some credit for their work. So I truly do appreciate you reaching out to those folks to at least give them the courtesy of letting them know what happens here tonight.
Counselor Seymour?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief comment on that. And I understand there's a lot of wheels going on right now as far as budgeting and COVID and all the extra pressure that's been put on staff. But I want to thank Councilor DeMott for bringing up that question. While the boating task force was more than just an ad hoc committee, because it had a chairperson and then it had subcommittees on that. Did a great deal of work. I would assume that our lack of notification to them and the courtesy to that is why we've had no public comment on this tonight. So I think that was a miss, a big one.
Any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
I do just want to really quickly say thank you to the staff that helped negotiate this IGA. I do think that Westminster is going to be in a better position based off of this IGA with the shared responsibility and liability for Stanley Lake. And I also want to take a moment to say thank you to the task force. I know this has been an issue that's been pretty heated in Westminster. There was a lot of residents who invested quite a bit of time on the task force. I know tonight there's been some criticisms of that effort, but there's a lot of residents who dedicated their time and their energy to this, and I believe it was done in good faith. And I appreciated the chair of that group actually did speak tonight on this issue. So I don't know if he was watching his agenda or how he knew about it, but I did appreciate him taking the time and communicating that his hope and goal was to find a win-win situation, and they just weren't able to do that because of putting that goal of protecting our water supply first. Sometimes you can't have it both ways, and that appears to be the case at this moment in time on this. So I'm happy to vote yes tonight. I really respect everyone taking the time and energy to communicate their viewpoints and why they're voting on this. But to me, this is a clear win for Westminster, and I am so thankful for the effort and energy that went into it.
Last call for comments.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'd like to clarify two things just really quickly. First of all, Mr. Gink didn't mention it, but in fact did send a letter to the chair of the Stanley Lake Boating Task Force about this being on the item. That person is also the chair of his Park and Recreation Board, and he notified the board this evening also. I'm also a bit surprised that staff didn't mention, so I will, that this agreement, this IGA agreement, could in fact be reopened at some point in the future. If in fact there was undeniable evidence that came out from the study we'll be doing here in the next year, that boating could be allowed on the lake and it would be reliable in terms of water quality. There's no question about it. Our two partners are very concerned about what they've heard and read about zebra quagga mussels and the threat to their water source. We were likewise very concerned about the sole responsibility we had for liability. So we brought this to you tonight as a way right now to enter into an agreement that we were fortunate that our two partners agreed to, that split that liability, and also have them participating in developing this research project to look at, as Councilor DeMott mentions it, all of the safety issues of the lake. But I'm not going to promise anything moving towards the future, but I do know that the two partners that we have and the city of Westminster staff would not be in favor of recommending boating unless we had an undeniable reason to trust that that would not be a problem. We're going to be working together to get that answer, but just to set the record straight this evening, for those who might be wondering if this is the end of the road, as long as we don't have an answer to this issue, right now we would not recommend boating. It isn't to say that couldn't happen down in the future, and the study we have is a good effort. And I appreciate our partners coming to the table with us to work on all those issues moving forward. Thank you.
Last call, Councilor Smith, would you like to close this item?
Sure, thank you. Mr. Tripp, as a follow-up, my understanding is that the committee reviewing this needs to have a unanimous agreement to move a item to all city councils, so 3 different councils, in order to get boating back on the lake. So not only are they going through a committee, they're going through 3 city councils. Is that how I understood and read this IGA?
Thank you for the question, Councilor Smith. Because it's a detail in the contract, I believe you're right in that, but I would like to have City Attorney Frankel handle that question.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. So you're correct, Councilor Smith, in that the agreement can be amended by agreement of the parties. So the agreement as it's drafted now does contemplate the parties' ability to change it. So it would require agreement of the 3 parties to the agreement to make that sort of a change, but it absolutely could be done per the agreement's terms.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, you have before you items, the item 10D, the amendment to the Standing Lake IGA. I have a motion and a second. Ms. Fitch, would you call the motion, please?
Yes, Counselor Bowles,
Yes.
Mayor Atchison,
Yes.
Counselor Demott,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights,
Yes.
Counselor Seymour,
No.
Counselor Scully,
Yes.
and Counselor Smith.
No.
Thank you, Council. The motion passes on a 4-3 vote. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a request for a short bio. The next item up on the agenda will be the COVID update. Once we're done with that, the final item of business will be Councilor's Bill number 32. And that will be on item 11A as old business. It is currently 8:20. Council, can you be back in 5? All right, let's take a short pause till 8:25. We are on recess. All right, for the record, it's 8:26. I can see on the camera, all council members are back. Mr. Tripp, to your knowledge, are all staff members back?
I'm not sure, but they better be, right?
Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is our COVID update. Mr. Tripp, if you and your staff lead out on this, please.
I sure will. Tonight, we've got short comments from about actually the case load and what's happening with data from Max Kirschbaum. Excuse me, I'm looking through my notes here and I can't come up with it. We also have a comment. Hang on, excuse me. Okay, pardon me. A review of the public health order by City Attorney Frankel. There have been changes, particularly on the Jefferson County side, just that took effect today at 5 p.m. And then we thought we'd provide a short report to you on the item that you approved last council meeting, which is the city's public health order ambassador program. So that'll be Jason Gink. So Max, Dave, and Jason, please just queue up and take us to the end of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. This is Max Kirschbaum, Public Works and Utilities. Matt, if you could bring up the slides for this evening. Next slide, please. This evening, in addition to just showing the data slide, I will run through quickly run through to give you a look at the restrictions slide, as there are some changes, and that will be a good transition for me into the information that Dave Frankel will provide on the public health orders. On the data that you see on this slide, this information, as we have been doing, is as of last Friday, November 6th. And you can see in the state data, a significant change in the upward direction in cases per 100,000 up to 546, which is a percent positivity rate of nearly 11. And you'll notice that that positivity rate in both of our counties is also well into the double digits. In terms of statewide hospitalizations, based on I said we would try to consult with Tri-County and get a little bit better feel for the metric that is used as one of the determinants for the dial. With Tri-County, we learned that there are some concerns with that the data at the county level in terms of being either as a green or a red indicator as stable or on the rise. So instead, what I'd like to share with you tonight is at a statewide level that the current admissions are 1,060, which is about 200 higher than the peak in the spring. That is a 7-day average of admissions of 144 patients per day over a course of a 7-day. So it is accelerating significantly on the hospital admissions. That's statewide data. Looking at Adams County, again, we're at level orange. This data shows 868 and the 14.9%. I checked this data just before this evening's meeting. That number for Adams County, just from Friday to this evening, has now jumped to 916 with a positivity rate of 14.2%. On the Jeffco side, 525 as of Friday, and that data is now at 584. So it's still maybe not as significant as Adams, but both of those show well into the red. If you look at the CDPHE slide that shows the by county map, and you look at the case rate per 100,000, you'll see that a majority of Colorado's 64 counties are showing red. So that too is significant. Moving on, Matt, next slide, please. This first one is just the reminder, nothing has changed here in terms of the metrics that are used by the state and the counties in determination of the dial position. But if you'll go to the next slide, this is a series of slides that I always have as backup if you want to take a look at them, but they're easy to find on the CDPHE website. I don't plan to discuss them here other than to just highlight a couple of things that stick out for at level orange, the restrictions, the guidance for primary through or pre-K through 12th grade school is the switch is now suggested remote or hybrid learning with limited in-person. That's a little bit of a change from yellow. And then you'll see the bottom line here focused on places of worship. And if we go to the next slide, you'll start to see some finer granularity on what they break out as categories and restrictions. You'll see a lot related to whether the function is indoor or outdoor, whether it is seated or not seated, things like that, to try to create some distinction that might be, the way I would look at it is offer a little bit more flexibility where it can be safely offered. A lot of activity related toward restaurants, both indoor and outdoor, at the level orange. And the next slide, I think, may be the last one. Nope, still two more to go. Here's where I was talking about the events, both indoor and outdoor, or even guided. So a lot more granularity, a lot more line items than there used to be. Specifically, I think so that there can be flexibility where it can be safely offered. I recommend to you where to find these by a URL, but it's easy to get to these slides to look at the details on either the county or at the CDPHE level. That was all I had to prepare for this evening, but it kind of lays a good foundation. Unless you have any questions at this point, I'd like to pass it to City Attorney Dave Frankel to talk about the public health orders themselves.
Max, before you move on, Councilor DeMott had a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Max, for the presentation. I'm just curious on some of the data, and maybe you don't know this, but I had heard from somebody in the medical field that although we have a concerning amount of hospitalizations and rises in cases, that our mortality rate is still low. Can you validate that for me? And the other thing that I was told was that the turnover from hospital stays has improved as far as people aren't staying in the hospital as long when they are hospitalized. Do you know any metrics around those two things?
Maybe that kind of information there's a lot of opportunity to drill down at the CDPHE level on specific hospitalization data. I don't drill down on that too deeply, but I can take a look there in terms.
If you don't know tonight, that's
length
fine.
of stay, right?
In the future, it would be nice. I'm always trying to look at wherever there's positives in what has otherwise been a very trying, challenging year. Because if those things are true, that at least are some trends that, are encouraging, even where the rest are not so much. And, we need to really look at these guidelines and try to do what we can as individuals to try to curb this. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, I can do that. I haven't been reporting on mortality because it's no longer, it's not one of the 3 metrics on which the dial position is set. So that's why I've spoken less about the issue of mortality.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Sykes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Kirschbaum, for the presentation. Is there a chance we can go back to the slide that shows our metrics? I guess I wanted to understand a little more clearly why we aren't reporting now on hospitalizations in Adams and Jefferson. Can you go, I know you said something about it and I missed it. I apologize. Can you repeat why that's
Yes,
not
sure.
being?
Matt, if you'll go back to the first slide.
That one.
I did not show it further here, but both Adams and Jefferson County are shown as red by the metric, which is stated as either being red or green, meaning 0 to 7 days of stable or declining, or greater than 7 days of stable or declining hospital admissions. I think those of you who were on the call with Dr. Douglas last Thursday at noontime, I asked this very question in a chat, and his answer was that metric just being as a green or red doesn't provide a whole lot of help or a whole lot of information in terms of what's really happening with hospitalizations.
Okay, and I appreciate that the colors themselves aren't, really indicative of what's going on. But I do think one of the most compelling reasons to really take this seriously is hospital capacity issues. And so it would be helpful for us as a council to still have some level of understanding of how, what is the hospital capacity or admissions in Adams County or Jefferson County, and honestly statewide, because I think that is what, to Councilor DeMont's point, if we're seeing huge spikes and getting it, but we're not seeing any increase in hospitalization or anything, that might lead us to different policy, not us, but it may make it easier to understand certain policy decisions or not. And so I guess I still find that information somewhat relevant to know if admissions are increasing or decreasing and by what number. Perhaps I'm alone in that, but it does seem relevant to me. And what I've heard, I was not on the call on Thursday at noon, and thank you to all my colleagues who were. I apologize. I have a different job in addition to this one, but my understanding is there's a lot of predictions that our hospitals are going to have capacity issues in as little as 4 weeks, which has made me a little bit more concerned. Is that something that you have heard as well? I believe the mayor has stated it.
You're correct, I did. And that was based off a briefing with CDPHE that was given to Metro mayors last week, that the projection by the state is that we would reach our 1,800 bed capacity in about another 4 weeks. And going on the current trends of what we are seeing with the infections and hospitalizations and what they use to compile that, is they're anticipating, based on their projections, not ours, that we could overwhelm the ICU bed capacity by Christmas. That is the slide that was given to us.
To add to that,
Yes. Go ahead, Max.
to add to that, the current state map shows Jefferson, Adams, Arapahoe, and all as being in the red on that hospital indicator. The CDPHE website says that 12% of hospitals are anticipating ICU bed shortages within the next week.
Thank you. I feel that's very relevant information, and I think something we should perhaps track. I don't know if my colleagues agree, but I do think numbers plus criticality, I guess, is valuable.
Any other comments before we move to Mr. Frankel?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I want to also say I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Sites. Don't we also have a concern though that we don't have extra staff to move into an area where we have an overflow? So we have we don't have visiting nurses. We don't have when we have this kind of happening in all kinds of states, they used to be able to move them around. Aren't we short on visiting nurses and medical staff to go to hospitals? Now they're going to be tied up where they are, correct?
Again, that is according to the comments that normally I would make them, but you're asking the questions before I got to trailing behind Max with his report. This is the same comments that were made last Thursday by the CDPHE, is that, as an example, we have the surge facility at 84th and Federal. The indication from the state was it would take 2 to 4 weeks to stand that facility with equipment, getting the facility cleaned up and ready to go, 2 to 4 weeks. Even if they could do that, they don't have the capacity to staff it.
Okay.
The amount of staff available, as you indicated, that typically comes from contract suppliers is using up all the capacity they have in the states where they're already at. So to move them from one state to another is not a viable thing right now. My conversation with the 4 CEO hospital providers that currently serve Westminster is they are on a shortage of staff already and not likely to pick up staff from other contractors because, as we all know, when we went through the beginning of this pandemic and all the elective surgeries and stuff that were cut off at the hospitals had a financial impact to them. And because of that, they saw staff being released and they have not brought them back. Now, as we're starting to go into these level 3s and higher with our infections, we're seeing the likelihood of elective surgeries being turned off again, which again puts the financial strain back on the hospitals. So then if you don't have finances coming in, you don't have money to pay for staff. This is still a concern in my conversations with the hospital CEOs last week. It's the chicken and egg. If I don't have money, I can't provide services. But the ability right now, based on what the presentation was by Casey Wolf, last Thursday from CDPHE, is the ability to stand up these surge centers is very questionable because of the lack of staffing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry if I jumped the gun there a little bit, but I thought it was relevant to the conversation about hospitals. I agree with what everyone has said, Councilor DeMott and Mayor Pro Tem Sites. I think we need a little more. When we just say it's in the red, I don't know what that means sometimes. So thank you.
Okay. Councilor Mayor Pro Tem Sites, come back to you again, and then we're going to try to move to Mr. Frankel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This might be a question for both Director Kirschbaum and for the mayor. Obviously, one of our indicators is in red and has been for a bit of time. That 14.9, and I understand we just heard that it actually went down a little bit, our positivity level. But how long do you think the state will give us with multiple indicators in the red and let us stay at level orange? Do we have a gut feel on that, or a feel like an informed kind of prediction on that?
Based on the comments from Dr. Johnson at last week's meeting, we're on that 2-week window if we have not a major rise, which could happen at any time. But within at least 2 weeks, the state's going to want to know how we're doing on leveling this number off or reversing it. So we're 1 week into that. I expect by Friday of this week, Tri-County is going to have to make an update to the state, tell them where they are and what actions they've taken that are producing some sort of results. And either the state will say, we appreciate the results you're getting, or we think you're moving down the right direction, but you haven't shown an improvement. They may give us as much as another 2 weeks, or they may say you're going to stay at home based upon the meeting they have. It will be up to the state and what communication is between them and Tri-County.
I guess I would say to anyone listening, there's a lot at stake. I really would hate to see us go into the stay-at-home level. That's going to cause a lot of pain for a lot of residents and a lot of local businesses. And so if we can all make a commitment, and it is hard, we are all fatigued, but this is, I don't know how I really hope we'll all be committed to preventing that.
All right, Mr. Frankel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kirschbaum, for the data that you provided as a lead into this information. I wanted to address council this evening because I think it's important for you and those listening to understand that as of 5 o'clock this evening, Jefferson County moved to orange also. So the materials that were presented to you showed the state prior to 5 p.m. when Jefferson County was at the yellow, which was level 2, but orange is now level 3 of safer at home, defined as safer at home high risk. So that's the level that Adams County had been at since I believe October 28th. Now Jefferson County is there as well. And I believe it's a result of the higher numbers as Mr. Kirschbaum described in his presentation. Also important for council to understand is that in an effort, I understand, to avoid going to the red, stay-at-home order for Adams County, on Saturday, a new public health order went into effect in Adams County, which is, I think, even more restrictive than orange level restrictions. And I think it's important just to understand that the Adams County public health order imposes some more restrictive terms than the state had in place for Adams County, and those include a curfew after 10 p.m. and a further reduction, I believe, in party sizes that are allowed into restaurants, and recommendation that time limits be established by restaurants to facilitate turnover of tables. There are also more restrictive rules in place now for the Adams County side as to alcohol service. Previously, sales of alcohol had to end at 10 p.m. Now, no service or consumption is permitted after 10. And after 10 p.m., my understanding is restaurants can only serve takeout food. So I think it's important to understand that we do have a more restrictive order in place on the Adams County side now, to be aware of its terms, but also in light of Jefferson County's shift from yellow to orange, to understand that on the west side of our city, we also now have some more restrictive terms in place. When Jefferson County previously had sought variances under prior public health orders, those variances were tied to being able to maintain lower levels of COVID spread. So my understanding is those variances are now gone. One exception of note for Westminster particularly, that we have site-specific variances that were granted by the state for the Butterfly Pavilion, as well as Chatfield Farms. But specifically in Westminster, those are continuing in effect. So the terms of those site-specific variances are allowed to continue. So the Butterfly Pavilion, my understanding is, can continue its operations as it was prior to 5 p.m. Before Jefferson County went to orange. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And so, thank you.
Mr. Gank, would you come talk to us about the ambassador program?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to provide a brief update. Just wanted to share a few things. And citywide, cross-department staff have been working with Tri-County Health and Adams County to provide information resources to support our residents. Information about how to celebrate the holiday safely, how to find a free testing site, how to access financial resources if quarantine is required, and how to find food and housing options if that's a need. So we're doing the best job we can to get information out there. And In terms of specifically the Public Health Ambassador Program, I just wanted to update council that we did recruit successfully 6 individuals from within the city to take on the Public Health Ambassador opportunity. And there will be training provided with their first true boots on the ground day on November 11th. The team will operate in pairs and really focus in areas in Adams County and parts of the city where cases are on the rise. And again, I just want to emphasize the focus of all of this is on education and information. One more thing, if you don't mind, to provide a brief update is the city did receive its first complaint from Tri-County Health. The complaint was issued by a patron who is a neighbor of Wolf Run Park in Westminster. And I shared that with council previously just to make sure that you have that update. And the expectation from Tri-County Health was really about communication and awareness, and staff executed a communication plan on Sunday with a group that Tri-County Health was concerned about. And the communication went very, very well in a customer service manner with a very positive outcome. So I just wanted to make sure council was aware, however, that we did receive a complaint from Tri-County Health. In this case, it was about large gatherings in city-owned spaces, in this case, Wolf Run Park. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions you might have on that or any other update that I provided. Thank you.
Any other questions in regards to the COVID update? All right, Matt, if you will take us back to the agenda, we'll move on to the last item of business for the council. We have item 11A. This is the second reading on Council's Bill number 32. And when the council is ready, we'll entertain a motion at that time. Mayor Pro Tem Sykes, I'm sorry, Councilor Bowles beat you in by a second.
Oh, too bad. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 32 on second reading, amending Title 4 of the Westminster Municipal Code, eliminating the sales and use tax exemption for cigarettes.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this item? Ms. Fitz, this is a roll call vote, if you will, please.
Yes, Mayor Atchison,
Yes.
Councilor Demott,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mayor Atchison was a yes, Councilor Demott was no, Mayor Pro Tem Sights was yes. I apologize. Councilor Seymour.
No.
Councilor Seymour votes no. Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Councilor Scully votes yes. Councilor Smith.
No.
Councilor Smith votes no. And Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
Councilor Bowles votes yes.
Thank you, council. This is Council's Bill number 32, passes on a 4-3 vote. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the business of the City Council for November the 9th. Enjoy the rest of your evening and have a pleasant day.
Good night, council.
Good night, everyone.